You've watched hundreds of self-improvement videos and followed all of their advice, yet you still aren't making the money you want. As the truth is, focusing on self-improvement is actually ruining your chances of succeeding in business. As soon as I started focusing on the one thing that I'm about to share with you, it actually allowed me to collect over $50,000 into my online business, as well as close over $150,000 in sales for myself and other online partnerships that I've been a part of. Now, I promise to teach you exactly what that is, and trust me, it's not some random cold DM strategy or some sales group that I'm going to try to sell you into that makes me coach coaches who are coaching coaches on coaching coaches. Instead, it's a simple 4-step process that you have never heard of, as I created it over about the last 2 to 3 years in business. Starting with step 1, as soon as you can find out what's actually wrong, what's wrong with self-improvement, what's wrong with the way that you've been going about things, then what we can do is figure out the truth. In the summer of 2023, I was doing all these self-improvement habits, talking about I was waking up on time. I would go sit outside on my porch, meditate for half an hour. I would come back inside, take a cold shower, grounding, and all of that good stuff. But there was a problem. The problem is that as I was uploading onto YouTube, trying to really grow, and you can even check from a couple years ago, trying to grow in this self-improvement space, I was getting nowhere. I wasn't making any money, I wasn't getting any views, and I wasn't succeeding in the things that I wanted. And I honestly didn't even really enjoy it. And then over time, I actually ended up improving less, which is weird. You would think on self-improvement, you would get more growth, but in reality, that just wasn't the case. Because when it came down to it, I acted the same when it came down to having hard conversations, saying no when it mattered, actually understanding how to develop the right skills rather than skills that these gurus just told me I should. You don't want to know the surface level thing, that just do meditation or, cold showers, because the only reason you're doing those is to try to solve symptoms of a problem that is coming from your past. And what I mean by this is that you, at the core of your mind, have this foundation. But until you can understand what that actually is and what these symptoms, like you're staying up late, you're still watching YouTube, you're still playing video games, and maybe even in your business, you're barely putting in the time to do outreach or do whatever that case may be. They're all rooted in deep core issues that have been conditioned into you in your past from some other narrative that you've built in your mind. Obviously, what you're gonna need is different from these influencers that you watch or the basic self-improvement habits that you do. Well, because man, your past is different. You are a different person than I am, than Hamza is, than Andrew Tate, or some of these other influencers that you might be looking up to. So what we need to figure out is how are these things, or what do these things actually represent in your life? Because at the end of the day, what you have to realize is that your phone isn't the problem. YouTube Shorts isn't the problem. The junk food isn't the problem, and staying up late isn't the problem. What the true problem is what it represents in your life. What are you getting away from, or what are you trying to go towards? And this is by understanding, well, what do you lack? What do you lack in your life, and what things are you trying to compensate for? Because the problem is as you try to grow your business, you're going to continue to implement the wrong things, creating eventually this pressure chamber that explodes, making you not enjoy your work to the point where you sit down and you can't even do it. So what we need to figure out is exactly what these things are representing in your life. Why are you doing business in the first place? And actually discovering yourself rather than just trying to improve. Because if this foundation right here is so shaky and you don't even understand it, as soon as you try to build up a base on top of it, it's just going to collapse. For example, as you first started off in business, I guarantee that there's been times that you were able to do the work. It felt so enjoyable and like you were getting after it. But as time went on, it became less enjoyable. You actually started to procrastinate more because you didn't understand how to deal with the stress of your situation. Now, there's actually a reason for this, and there's a way to solve this problem, but it comes down to one simple thing that I'm going to explain to you quickly. And this thing has nothing to do with those basic self-improvement habits, and it's not going to be some magical solution to making 10K a month either, because at the end of the day, none of those things matter if you don't understand what they represent. And the only way you can actually do that is through true awareness. Awareness of yourself. Awareness of the present, and awareness of who you are and who you're becoming. Because we're never stagnant in our reality. We're either moving forward or we're getting pulled backward. Because the truth is, the more you try to become a certain type of person, if you're not actually believing in your subconscious that you are that person, there's going to be this lack of awareness and eventually a disconnect, a pull, and a break between who you say you're becoming and who you are. So what we need to do is create true alignment between these things, so that way as time goes on, you don't box yourself into this certain identity of, oh, I'm just not a person who does blank. Because you have to understand that as you go throughout business, there's going to be the need for duality. You need to be able to be patient sometimes, but be impatient in others. Because as I started going into 2024, after I had made about $10,000, I actually started making more. I hit like $3,000 a month and then $5,000 a month in my old coaching business. As this time went on, I started doing more of the bad habits. And that was an issue because the more you do the thing that you label as bad, the more you pull yourself away from who you need to be to achieve the goals you have. However, again, notice how I said label as bad. Nothing's bad or good. It's all about what it represents in your life. Sometimes you need to stay up late. Sometimes structure and regiment is the best thing for you. But it's all about having that awareness and being able to have those times of reflection to understand who you are and the behaviors you possess at the moment, and then what skills and what systems in your life can you use to grow. Understand that you're always changing, and that as you go through new experiences, there's new conditions that present themselves. And these new conditions that present themselves create new perceptions of yourself and the world. So our goal is always to be in constant awareness of how we're being shaped and how we're being affected by our experiences. Because, for example, imagine you go to take a test in your school, or when you were in school, you were going to take a test, and your teacher tells you you cannot use any notes. Guess what? You then try to use your notes anyways. You get the test taken from you, can't use your notes. Next time you go to take a test, even if it's not with the same teacher, you are going to assume you can't use the notes, because the reality is you've been conditioned to believe within the experience of taking a test, you can't use any notes anyways. So then you label, that thing as, okay, I can't use notes while I'm taking my test. And then naturally, as time goes on, sometimes you don't even realize that, wait, I'm not even using my resources. I'm not even using any notes. I'm not even using any of this content I've been watching to my benefit in entrepreneurship. It's because you've been conditioned to believe a certain thing and you didn't have awareness of the fact and how that, is representing in your life today. Now, sometimes when people start developing this awareness, and you probably experience this yourself, you start to feel guilty and you start to judge yourself for doing these things. But we don't want judgment, because the problem is, and when there's judgment of your past self, that all that is you attaching yourself to the past. And then you get stuck in this constant cycle of, imagine there is a timeline of where you could be and where you're going right now. So this is going into the future, and this is where you could end up. This is the 10K a month. This is the dreams that you've been telling yourself that you have had for a while. The issue is that As time goes on, if you continue to focus on this past version of you, then all that does is put a large barrier for you actually to be able to break through and get to that point you want. The reason for this is because of the fact that you keep telling yourself you are this person, but you need to be this person. In the continuous judgment, all that does is label yourself as an individual who's not able to grow. So what we want is awareness of our behavior, but then focus on changing the language that you use and what the things you do represent in your life. Because everything that we do is simply a collection of the stories we tell ourselves about them. So if we continue to tell ourselves that I suck, I can't do this, or I'll try, but in reality, you're only saying you'll try because you know that there's a chance for failure, then you're constantly keeping yourself trapped in an endless cycle of maybes, could've, would've, and then should've. And you get this stuck in this weird cycle where you realize 6, 12, or 24 months went by without true progress in the results that you've been looking for, due to the fact that you continue to reflect your past actions and behaviors into your future results, keeping you stuck in this endless cycle of mediocrity. Now, how do we actually change this base? How do we stop judging ourselves, and how do we stop feeling this guilt? And how do we do this so that way we can actually change who we are and become the type of person who can achieve the goals we have? Well, that brings me to step 3. It's changing the base. Understand that changing the base is one of the best things you can do, because instead of just doing some random self-improvement habits, waking up at 4 a.m., which I do, but waking up at 4 a.m. because some YouTuber told you to, instead, man, you have to change who you are, or change who you think you are. Because by thinking a certain way, you tune into certain frequencies of thought. As anger and resentment and judgment are all at this bottom level low frequency that keeps you stuck at a certain level, if we bring it up to gratitude and presence and focus and passion and love, that's higher frequency emotions and thoughts that we can tune into. And when we are constantly tuning into these higher frequency thoughts, we're able to change who we think we are, because we can recondition our brain to believe certain things. So what we need to be able to do is constantly tune into this sort of thought, that sort of emotion, so that way we can change who we believe we are. And eventually, because your thoughts leads to your behaviors, well, that means if you change your behavior, you can eventually change the results you get. As over time, if you do one thing enough and enough and enough, not only do you get better, but it leads to a certain outcome. If you sit down and read 1 page of a book, and then read 2 pages and 3 pages a day and 4 pages a day, eventually you'll finish the book. It's the same thing with your life. If over time you just do slightly better every day, there's going to be this exponential growth that you'll eventually reach. Now, how do you actually reach this? How have I made a decent amount of money? I actually got to like over $8,000 a month collected into my bank account in 1 month. But following that, I almost made nearly nothing. And the reason for this is because I didn't effectively change the base. So I had to go back and start doing some more reflection. Clearly define not only the vision that I had, but the character that I needed to possess to achieve this vision, and take advantage of opportunities in front of them. Because a lot of the time, what most of us view as failure or mistakes is in truth an opportunity to grow, but we constantly focus on the negative rather than telling ourselves about the positive and asking questions that allow us to understand who we can develop in, or who we can become and who we are becoming. And instead holding ourselves back because of this perceived failure, when in reality, it's truly an opportunity for growth. If you constantly fail and fail and fail and you think you're failing, if you do it enough and get clear feedback on top of it, and then just improve every single time, there's eventually going to be a time where you realize, oh my God, I've grown so much, and you're able to reflect back on who you were and who you've now become. But you can only do that through consistent action, and then through consistent action, you can finally become the type of person that you want to be. However, at the end of the day, What you have to understand is through that time, you want to be able to actually understand how to grow in your business and do it in a way that's easy and simple. And not only easy and simple, but it allows you to develop the skills and beliefs necessary to grow, because sometimes what you'll hear is that young entrepreneur made $100,000 a month, then all of a sudden they're living back in their mom's basement. Well, the reason for this is because they focused on making money and just doing the work rather than understanding how to do the work in the right way to be able to develop their skills and recondition their mind for sustained longevity. And I know you don't want to be in the position where you're living paycheck to paycheck or not actually free in the future. So you need to focus on genuine growth and doing it in the right way rather than focusing on making as much money as possible. Because at the end of the day, that money is only a representation of the things you feel like you lack in the moment. So how do we not only define these things, and how do we actually, grow past them? Well, that brings me to step 4, growth. The way I want to define this growth is as simple as understanding that your work works on you more than you work on it. So if we can figure out how to make our work on us in the right way rather than the wrong way, then we're going to be able to grow so much more than we could even imagine. So imagine this, right? This is your, little brain right here. And every time you work, there's some sort of thought or some sort of impulse or subconscious thing that sinks into your mind. And then over time, as you develop different things and as you learn different behaviors, you start to slowly change, even if it's not consciously. And then eventually you'll get to a point where you've realized that you look back and how did I even get here? We want to make that feeling a good one, not a stressful one. We want to get you to the point where your work feels freeing and amazing and fun rather than boring or stressful or constraining. And how you do this is by understanding what stories you tell yourself in the situations and what you actually do in your work and how you do it. Because one person can create content like Mr. Beast with the plan to just grow businesses, while the other could create content because they want to ethically share different things that they're passionate about. It's all about what values you hold and why you hold them. So ask yourself, what do I truly value, and what would the person I need to become to achieve the vision I have value? And then tune into those values and ask yourself, what behaviors would I do to really represent this value and embody these values in my life today? And then apply each one of these things to your business. To give you a practical example, one of the biggest things that I've been focusing on is true integrity. Focusing on not exaggerating at all, being truthful and honest. And the reason for this isn't just so, I don't lie to other people, but it's because if you lie to somebody else, you're simply lying to yourself. Because if you're not comfortable sharing the truth with someone, then you're not comfortable sharing the truth with yourself. So if I've been able to mold the way I do things to being completely integral in the behavior I have, then I'm going to be able to not only not exaggerate and tell the truth to others, but I'm going to be able to take full accountability, allowing me to have more awareness and grow in the future. So you need to figure out what are these key values for yourself and how can those things be represented in your work today, rather than focusing on making 10K a month or 100K a month or $500,000 a month in the next few years. Focus on these key things. And then by being able to do so, you're going to be able to actually grow and consequently make all of that money, but not because you tried to brute force your way to it. Instead, you focus on embodying the characteristics of the person you want to be, instead of thinking that the money you're going to make or the car you want or the house you want or the travel you want is going to somehow magically make you that person. With that being said, if you want one-on-one free help and guidance to be able to apply these concepts in your life and business, all you have to do is click the top link in the description, follow me on Instagram, and then DM me letting me know that you came from this video. And dude, I'll help you out completely for free. I literally don't have anything to sell you right now. I just want to help guys out like yourself because a couple of years ago, when I was trying to figure everything out on my own, I would have loved to get this same advice. That's all. Have a good one. Peace.